Well, hey there, everyone. Thanks a lot for inviting me tonight to this crop circle event at Coronation Hall. I really appreciate being here. Well, actually, I guess this is my hologram. I'm not physically with you, but I am a remote viewer, so I can watch you guys watching me right now in real time. No, but all joking aside, thanks a lot for having this event. This is one of my favorite topics, crop circle weirdness. I think if you're here tonight watching this event, you ought to give yourself a pat in the back because, as the Grateful Dead used to say, what a long, strange trip it's been. And it certainly has. I got involved in this in 1997. I came along with Ron Russell, who most of you know or have heard of on his crop circle tour. I wanted to know what crop circles were because I had been doing something called remote viewing, which many of you know about, and I wanted to find out what I had been viewing since someone had given me a crop circle to view. It was one of the big ones from 1996, the Windmill Hill Julia set. And I had to figure out what this was all about. So I came with Ron in 1997. Now, I immediately began to hear stories from people as soon as I got to Wiltshire about battery failure, camera failure, weird things happening around crop circles. Now, my training as a sociologist would be to say that those were urban legends. This is how a traditional academic would handle this. They would say people like to create stories around things, and they like to create cults, and they like to create weird ideas. And we should kind of investigate this like a psychologist, like kind of why do these people believe in weird things? There's even a book by that title. But my real sense of it was that these were actually real events that people were experiencing, and these were not just fabrications. And I didn't experience anything really out of the ordinary in 1997. The first circle I encountered was the big Coke snowflake fractal, six-sided fractal at Silbury Hill, that really huge one. It was 300 feet across. Just the feeling of that was so strange. And that was like my second day in Wiltshire, was to experience that. And then the other one showed up by Milk Hill. And it was really quite a summer. And I got exposed to all the stories about the weird things that happen around crop circles. Well, I came back in 1998, and that is where the kind of weirdness started for me. There were two events where it started. One was we were coming down the hill from Knapp Hill towards, Coronation Hall, towards Alton Barnes. And we stopped partway down because we could get a view of that seven-sided fractal shape in Eastfield. And I noticed that as I was holding my camera up, that it started to rewind by itself without me having touched the rewind button. This is in the days when we still used film, okay? And then a few minutes later, about an hour later, we went up to the Hydra Formation, which was in Westwoods. It was kind of this so-called Hydra, looked kind of like a water bug in the Westwoods. You're probably familiar with that one. And that also had a strange effect. I couldn't focus properly all of a sudden, and the film rewound again. Now, there's a little button on that camera that you would have to press to get it to rewind, but there it was, rewinding by itself. And the camera had never done that before, so here was my first weirdness in a crop circle story. And it actually snowballed, so to speak, from there. Because when I came back in 1999, and this is what I want to talk to you about, this is my weird experience, I had a chance to visit the Devil's Den formation, the formation at Fifield Down. Now, you all are familiar with this. Let me put it up here on the screen. It was this beautiful formation at the so-called Devil's Den, this little Celtic dolmen down here, I guess, as the Christians called it, Fifield Down. This beautiful kind of six-sided crop formation. And it's really interesting, actually, how I actually even had a chance to see this formation. Let's look at another view of it. Here's a bigger picture of it. And now you'll notice that it looked a little damaged here. I'm afraid that was our fault because we actually flew over it in helicopters, and our helicopter pilot wanted to show off, and he kind of almost landed in the crop circle. Now, I know this is illegal according to CAA regulation. I don't know what the limit is, a couple hundred feet or something, but he insisted on doing this. We didn't tell him to do it. So that's rotor damage from the wind effect of the blades. But this is how I encountered this formation. I actually had heard that there was a formation out there, and I decided to go find it somewhere in Fifield Down. I had heard that there was this formation. And I started out, and if you don't have, this is, the good old Explorer map 157. If you don't have one of these, you should have one. This was like my staple to get around Wiltshire back in 1990s. I started out at Avebury. As you can see here in the circle, that's actually the henge that goes around Avebury. I'll hold it up to the camera here. And I hiked out to Fifield Down, which is, you go up to the Ridgeway. It's about 2.5 miles away. And through the Sorensen fields. The Sorensen fields are this, it's a preserve for the stones, the gray weathers, or Sorensen stones as they're called. And I didn't know exactly where this formation was because this was really at the very early days before the internet was really developed and before GPS. So you kind of had to find the crop circles actually by going out and looking for them on foot. And this is how it was in the late 90s. So I walked across here. Now, it got to be the end of the day because this is like 2.5 miles away. And there was the formation in the distance right at Fifield Down. I could see it, but it was getting dark. The mist was coming in, and I could just in the distance see this formation, the Devil's Den formation. So I decided to come back the next day to look for it better. I came back with a guy named Masao Maki, who many of you are familiar with. He has written some music and books, and he's from Japan, lives in the United States, runs a sushi restaurant in Boulder. And even though I was from Boulder at the time, I hadn't met him in Colorado. I met him in England, actually, at the top of East Field one night when he was camped up there and I was doing my own skywatch. And I only later found out that he was from Boulder because we both met in the airport going back. He decided to come with me. And he's also, by the way, the author of this great book called In Search of Brazil's Quantum Surgeon. Now, this is a book about psychic surgery. Maki was a skeptic. He considered himself a debunker, and he wanted to come with me to see this circle because he really didn't believe in these things. And so this is what happened. We're walking down from the Gallops. We have driven up from the A4 towards Cladford. You've all seen that sign coming out of Marlborough. And we drove up there, parked in an area called the Gallops. We're walking down. We see the formation below us. As we're getting close to the formation, Maki notices that he gets the dirty heads indicator on his video camera. Now, this dirty heads indicator, this is back in the days of film. This was digital formatted film. What was it called? Mini DV. You remember those? It actually had a little cassette in it. And the dirty heads indicator is something that would show up after you've had the camera for years when the heads are actually dirty. This was a brand new camera. It started to act up and he couldn't get it to work. So he stopped about 50 feet from the circle. I continued on, not thinking what was going on, and I noticed immediately that my static meter froze at -3. Now, I had never seen it do that before. This is the static meter that Ron and I would use to go around measuring the static energy in the circles, thinking we could tell the difference between the man-made and the so-called real ones by the static charge. So here I'm walking in just at the edge of the formation. It freezes up at -3. I'd never seen it do this before. It basically stopped working, wouldn't work again for the rest of the day. So Maki and I go into the formation together, our devices not working. We're sitting in there, and looking around. And all of a sudden, a guy named Rob Spate, who you might have met or heard of back then, he was pretty active in crop circle research. He comes along, and this is what happens. I will play you the video.
My GPS has just gone wrong, basically, and the screen has gone.
Look at this, the strange sort of pixelation. Let me get
It's like
close
it's
up.
been pushed or something.
That's solid plastic.
Oh.
The last time I had this, all my batteries got red hot. So look at the batteries. They're flat as a pancake.
Let's have a look.
That's only the second time it's ever happened. The last time
You had 14 hours when you came in.
14 hours of battery life when I came in. Just put that.
So there you have it. I have a number of these videos in a playlist, which I will show you at the end how you can watch all of them. They are many videos that I've taken of people's batteries and cameras failing. But this is the first one. This is the Devil's Den formation. This is the first time I had really experienced this en masse. So you had Maki's camera stop working, my GPS device, and then my static meter, Rob Spate's GPS device. You heard what he said. He had 14 hours of battery life, and then all of a sudden it's gone. So what could it be about these formations, regardless of who makes them? Why do some of them affect our cameras and batteries? For me, this is the strangest experience, just because I'd never seen that many devices fail within 5 or 10 minutes of each other. And I knew other people who went into this formation when it was new and fresh like this, and their cameras stopped working. Some of them started working again months later. So, this is the thing that science has not explained for us at all. What is it about the shape of crop circles that affects our cameras and batteries? Because I think this is one of the most important scientific discoveries that we could possibly have ever made, on par with any other scientific discovery. That is, if we put certain shapes, coherent shapes, into a wheat field or other grain crops, it's going to create electromagnetic effects that are truly strange. I have to say, I did see something like this happen about 2 years earlier. It's coming back to me. It was at the Danebury Hillfort Formation near Andover. It's a Celtic hill fort. I believe it's Celtic, a Neolithic hill fort. And this was the pattern. And Ron Russell put his Sony camcorder in the middle of the formation while we were walking around. And it never worked again that summer. When he sent it back to Sony, they said the solder joints had melted inside. So again, this is another example of many that I've seen now. So this really was the first one. Just one device, he put it down and it stopped. It stopped working, actually melted. The solder joints melted. So there is some energy force field in these crop circles. And throughout the years of research of crop circles, there have been, people that have attempted to find out about this. You remember that Colin Andrews did this study of the Milton Hill Farms formation south of Pusey. And they found that there were these magnetic anomalies that were aligned with the actual pattern of the formation. And it's just truly strange when you see how the actual pattern of the wheat could create magnetic changes. I mean, this is empirical scientific evidence that the shape of the formation is creating an electromagnetic field. Now, there's nothing to explain this. I asked a physicist I met recently at a remote viewing conference in New Orleans, and how this could happen, and he drew a picture of something that looks like crop circles. It's what makes your microwave oven work, the magnetic apparatus in a microwave oven, and it looks a lot like a crop circle, doesn't it? It's got that spiral pattern and these chambers and these electrons shoot out of it. And I said, well, Daniel, I can understand how that could happen in a metal device, but how does it happen in wheat? He goes, wheat's made of cellulose. It can't happen in a wheat field. but it does happen in a wheat field. So the physicists are not telling us anything. Anyway, we know that there is electromagnetic changes, and that it's affecting our cameras and our batteries. Now, I would suggest that it's truly weird because we don't have an explanation, and maybe we never will. But I would just point out that there's something about the shape and the directionality of the wheat itself, which gives it some of the properties of a liquid crystal, because normally the wheat stalks are standing up and they're not touching each other, then they're pointing all in the same direction, they're making contact, and it could be acting very much like a crystal. It's actually creating a kind of a lattice structure. Now, lattice structures have come up a lot in the news recently because if you've been paying attention, we have had increasing reports about something called the ECAT, Leonard Low Energy Nuclear Reaction. And a leading theory of why it works is that there's this lattice work in the palladium or in the nickel structure that allows hydrogen to interact with it in a way to create room temperature fusion, ending up creating a lot of heat, okay? Through a process that some people call superradiance, which is when a gas acts coherently and it actually illuminates. Reminds you a little bit of those balls of light. So lattice structures are coming up quite frequently now as an explanation for this Leonard process, low energy nuclear reaction. There's various versions of these devices you might have heard of, Andrea Rossi and so forth, but you can see a lot of heat is created and there's no conventional explanation at the moment why this is happening. But it suggests to us that lattice works are important, and perhaps the fact that we've created a lattice structure in fractal spiral shapes within a field is enough, even without any electromagnetic material there. The shape is enough to create something that creates energy, just like these nickel particles seem to create a lot of excess heat when they get in contact with hydrogen at a nuclear level. And it looks a lot like, kind of like has a symmetry to it, right? And a pattern, just like crop circles. And here's the nickel powder that seems to create this magical effect in the ECAT device. So perhaps there's a parallel here, and we're creating a sort of excess heat, excess energy from the geometry of the circle itself. In any case, that is what's interested me about it ever since. I've seen many examples of these battery failures. Now, I have a website, I'll give you a URL where you can go to. I created it for you. It's a playlist of all the weird things I've seen happen in crop circles. Eastfield, up at East Kennett, and other locations where tour groups that I've given, the people have had this happen to their cameras, brand new cameras. So if you go to bit.ly/crop circle weirdness, you will find a playlist on YouTube of weird things that I've seen in crop circles, including Devil's Den and many other formations throughout the years. I have seen it probably happen about 15 or 20 times. It even happened to good old Colin Andrews in one of the formations that we went into up a few years ago. It was that one that kind of went over the fence line, and he had his own camera stop working right there, just like everyone else. So this is a pervasive phenomena. It defies explanation to me, and I think it's going to lead us to very interesting things in the future. And these anomalies are not something to run away from like conventional science does. These are something to kind of go after, to explore them like you all are doing. So it's great that you're still interested in this, and I know we're going to be discovering some really fascinating things in the future. So I guess that's my 20 minutes. I'm sorry I can't hear the rest of your lectures tonight, but I'm sure we'll see each other again, and you can fill me in on what happened. So thanks a lot for listening. Feel free to contact me if you have any questions. Contact me any way you want, and I will fill you in if I missed any details here. But thanks again for inviting me, and I hope to see you all again sometime soon. Okay, take care for now, and bye-bye.